Hello, and thank you all for joining us. My name is April Leverrier, Digital Marketing Specialist with KEPServerEX. Joanne Bacharach, KEPServerEX Senior Applications Engineer, will host our presentation today. In today's webinar, Joanne will discuss KEPServerEX's most recent product release, KEPServerEX version 5.16. There will also be an opportunity for Q&A at the conclusion of the webinar. If at any time during the presentation you have a question, please raise your hand or type directly into the questions pane using your GoToWebinar control panel, and we will respond as efficiently as possible. I will now turn the presentation over to Joanne.
Hey everybody, I have a poll up, so if you could take a moment to answer that. What part of the world are you from? We'll get a little survey of who we're looking at here. So thanks for voting. All right, I'm going to share this. It's actually voting day today in the U.S., so you guys voted, but this doesn't count. So make sure you get out to your polls. All right, so it looks like majority from North America, but also some showing up from Europe and even Asia Pacific. So thank you for joining us at your nighttime. So that's great. All right, I'm going to go ahead and start showing my screen. Everybody should be seeing my screen right now. Hopefully you do. If you don't, please type in your questions pane and let us know if you're having any technical difficulties. Our applications engineers, Kylie Corrigan, Ray Labbe, and Sam Elsner are here to answer your questions as they come in and help you out if you need it. So once again, I am Joanne Bacharach. Just want to remind everybody before we get started that if you're interested in more information that we have on these products or anything like that, you can check out our YouTube channel. This will be posted as a recording, and we also have some great 5-10 minute tutorials on some of the plugins that we're going to be talking about today. We also offer training at KEPServerEX. We do have a monthly training that in 2015 it will pick up in March, so keep an eye out for that schedule. If you check out our product training LinkedIn page, KEPServerEX Product Training, you can follow us on this page and get updates on webinars like these, where we are in the world for training. So a colleague and I went out to Mexico for training last week, and then updates on training classes and other webinars and things like that. So just if you want to keep in touch or need resources outside of today's webinar. All right, so let's get started with the content here. This webinar is going to give a high-level overview of the new features and products that we have in our version 5.16, and this released a couple weeks ago in October. So I want to mention that we recently released 2 updates for 2 of our other products along with KEPServerEX version 5.16, Redundancy Master and Link Master. Link Master, there were some incremental changes and enhancements, and then Redundancy Master, the newest version has been improved to work on Windows 7 operating systems and higher. So in addition to KEPServerEX version 5.16, those 2 products, Redundancy Master and Link Master, will be available on the product CD. All right, so this version also includes 2 new plugins. It's a huge release, the Local Historian and something we call an Industrial Data Forwarder for Splunk. And then we also have actually 2 new drivers, 2 master drivers for IEC 6870, 101 and 104. And then finally, we've actually even updated a utility that comes along with the server called the Application Report Utility. And it has been updated with new functionality, and we'll demo that at the end of this webinar. So let's briefly explore each, and we'll start with our plugin. So I like polls. If you've attended my webinars before in the past, you know this. So I'm going to go ahead and launch another poll before we begin to just see how much experience you have on the line. And this lets me understand how to tailor my content as I go through this webinar, how much to explain about the different things that we're going to offer. So go ahead and take a moment to answer that poll. If you would vote, and I'll leave that open for a few seconds. Few more seconds. I can actually see the percentage of people that has voted, so I'll just wait until a few more of you chime in. Okay, great. Thank you for voting, and I'll share that. And it looks like we actually have a pretty even distribution, except for experts. So we got 1 through 4 pretty evenly distributed, and then a few experts on the line, which may even be some Kepler people on the line, so that's great. So thanks for voting. So I won't spend too much time going over the basics in this webinar, but for those of you that are beginners, I'll maybe spend a little bit of time talking about some of the basics so you're not completely lost. Okay, local historian plugin. So what's the background of this plugin? Our local historian project started with requests from our customers to support OPC historical data access, or HDA specification, as an interface to our product KEPServerEX. So let's understand why we were getting this request. Let's imagine we have this remote site, right, somewhere out in the field, maybe a power substation or a meter out in the field. And that has a controller out there, and then as well as this PC close to the controller, which is represented by this outlined box here. Okay, so on that PC that you have out on this remote site, you have KEPServerEX v5.16 installed, of course, with whatever driver you need to scan real-time data for that device. To historize data locally, you are going to want to use a local historian to create what we call a local data store. Then, using this OPC HDA specification, you can connect to another application to do some historical analysis or trending, and compare that to real-time data transfer. So we're not transferring historical data in this OPC-DA real-time transfer. Basically, it's the difference between transferring unbuffered data versus buffered data. So OPC HDA standardized the transfer of these buffered data records between the server and a connected historical analysis client. So to understand why that's attractive, why transferring buffered data is attractive versus transferring real-time data, we can look at what our customers were describing as far as issues. So maybe they had missing information in their corporate historians due to communication issues with that remote site. By transferring the historical records instead of real-time data, the user doesn't need to worry about constantly maintaining a high-quality real-time connection, which can be inefficient and expensive. The other thing is that customers still want really high-resolution information, so they still want to see this information every second or in the millisecond range. And local operators in the field, they need a way to easily access that information for analysis. So that behooves them to have this local data store that they can access with that high-resolution information without worrying about a network connection. So posed with that request, Kepler developed the local HDA historian plugin. This plugin can gather and archive data from the server, put it in a local data store on that local PC, and then serve it to any local connected clients for trending or analysis. And I'll talk about some more use cases once we get through the demo, but let me just demo this real quick. So here I have KEPServerEX, and for those of you who are new, this is what we call our configuration window. So this is where we create connections to devices, and I create a channel, device, and a tag is just a reference to an item in that device. So here I have, actually I'm using the simulator device driver to just simulate data on the server, so I can see that I'm simulating some generic functions here, ramp and sign. So I'm going to go ahead and go into my local historian plugin. I access this from this drop-down menu for the plugins. And if I click on that, this is the window I'll see if this is brand new. I'm going to click to create a new data store, and the first thing it asks me is to specify an archive location. So I do want to note that this archive location, first of all, by default it's going to your app data or your program data folder, but this location you're going to want to have it be somewhere that has enough memory for the data store and that it's going to persist for a long time. And that's because it is difficult to change the location of the data store just because of how the plugin works. There is a way to change the location. That's in our help file if you do need to do that at some point. And again, if this is a network location or something that you may be like an external drive that you could unplug from the computer, just make sure that it stays hardwired in there while you're actually historizing data. So I'm going to leave this at the default location for historical data, and if I click Next, then I can specify an import location. What this allows me to do is import previous data that maybe I logged off at another time or from another location. Maybe it's been backed up or archived out of the data store. So that's kind of cool because I can actually view previous data very easily by specifying this import location. I'm not going to do it right now. I'll demo that in a minute. Okay, so now rollover settings. We have the option to roll over based on day or a time, as well as based on file size. So what happens is we're archiving data to this active file, and then once that active file reach a 1-day time limit or a size limit, we'll roll that file over so it's available for viewing and accessing via any HCA clients and so forth. So I'm just going to leave these rollover settings at default. Retention settings, we do by default keep all the data store files, which means that you're going to want to make sure if you leave these default settings that you have some method of monitoring your data store files to make sure that they're not getting out of control and you have enough space on disk. You also have the option to let KEPServerEX handle the retention settings and actually clean out your data store if you would like to have that handled automatically by us. So then I get my summary of all my settings, and if I click Finish here, it's going to create my data store. And what I see is my data store status. So I see the location, my available disk space, the minimum required free space, and then the settings that I put in for rollover and retention. And then I see my status. This is really helpful because I can see what my licensing limit is, how many tags I'm storing off, and what my collection rate is. And this collection rate is going to be non-zero as soon as I start historizing data. And then finally, the full total size on disk of my data store will give me an indication of how much size on disk I have. So if I click on this group 1 here, I can click on the Browse for Tag or right-click, do a Browse for Tags to start historizing data from my server. And I do have the option to do static or dynamic tags. So static tags are tags I already have defined in my server. And I do also have the option to do branch level tag selection. So I can right-click and go Add all tags beneath selection or branch level tag selection. And if, say, I click on this R registers folder, I can say Add all beneath selection. And I'm getting my data in here. And if I click here, I can see there's some of my data potentially coming through, and there's some changing data. And you can see the actual values displayed in the plugin here, which is actually new for KEPServerEX. Those of you used to working with the server, you know that typically you can't see values coming through the server until you connect some type of external client. Well, with the historian plugin, you can actually see these values coming through. And if I click here to configure value display settings, I can actually change how I'm viewing this data. So maybe I want to show the last 100 updates, and maybe I want to do from the past hour. So I can see all the updates that were coming in maybe from the past hour by updating this display. I'm just going to set that back to what it was. I can stop data collection. I can stop it for maybe a single tag here, and I'll get a no value marker in my data store to show that that data collection has stopped, and then I can stop it for the entire group. So I'll go ahead and stop that. So that's really it. It's very simple for those of you that have maybe worked with other vendors, historians previously. Very easy to set up, under a couple minutes, able to start historizing data and start seeing that coming through from the server. So very helpful for this high-speed storage. All right, so let's take a look into the data store and see how these files are coming through. So here in the data store, this is some data I have archived off previously. I see I have these active and name files. So active is the file that the data is currently being logged to before it rolls over. And the name file is just basically an indexing, doing the mapping from the server to the archive. These name and active files can't be backed up, they can't be deleted or copied because the plugin and the server is actively using them. These TSD files are the rollover files. And these TSD files can be backed up. This is what you'd want to archive off. And they're a proprietary format that allow for the high-speed storage and archiving. The TSD contains a time range of data as specified by the user in those rollover settings. So this is what you can actually use if you're going to maybe import data, which I can show you here. Again, no import location was specified in the plugin when I originally set it up. If I get into properties, I can double click on the data store, right click, go properties, and I can actually here change any settings that I had previously besides the data store location, or browse for an import location. So I'm going to go ahead and browse to my program data folder, because that's where my data store location is going to be. So here's some previous data. You'll note that we index data stores with numerics. So I can see this 6788 data store was the one that I was using previously, and the 7515 is the one I just set up for you in the demo. So if I point towards the previous data store file and click OK, you'll see some messages coming through. It'll take a minute here. And it'll say historian is monitoring that import directory, and it gives you the file path, and then it goes ahead and tells you that it's imported those tags. And if I click on these tags, I see here's some previous data that I've stored off, and I can actually click on those tags and in my view here see the previous historian data. So I actually hadn't logged any data in the past hour for these, but maybe if I want to say show the last 100 tags, it'll give me an indication of those values. So that's creating a historian and logging off the data from your server. You can also create what we call a dynamic tag, which means I can simply go in here and specify a device path and then go ahead and enter any address that is accepted by that device instead of actually pulling in tags that I've already defined in the server. I can also change scan rate. Right now I'm updating that and historizing data every 1 second with no deadband. The deadband is a percentage of the data type range, so just keep in mind that that deadband is going to be very wide if you do apply it because it's the full data type range. Okay, that concludes the demo for the Local Historian plugin. One other thing I want to demo here is actually some updated diagnostic tools that we have for you. So previously, if I go into File Project Properties here, OPC-DA settings, we did have diagnostic settings for OPC-DA. Now we have OPC-HDA diagnostics. And so if I enable OPC diagnostics in this tab here in Project Properties and go View OPC Diagnostics, I can actually see HDA data coming through, and you'll see it's denoted by this HDA marker here. And so this was me connecting an HDA client previously, and you can see all the methods coming through for connecting that HDA client. So that is a nice little tool for those of you who use diagnostics to debug server connections. That is now available for HDA as well. All right. Let's wrap up here. So first I want to continue with a poll question before we wrap up, and I want to know, is anybody actually historizing data now that you know a little bit about the historian and our plugin in general? Is anybody already doing this? So you have a corporate or enterprise historian using a third-party vendor product, or you are using a local historian product that's not ours, or you're using some other method, or no, you're not historizing data. And I'll leave that open for a few seconds. Okay, keep voting. And that's great. And if I get a couple more votes in, I will stop the polls here. And it looks like some of you are actually, yes, using the historian. So a corporate or enterprise historian, 39%. Some of you are using local historian or another method, so it looks like the majority of people are actually historizing data. 30% of you say no. Well, hopefully either it's because you don't have a need or maybe this will meet your needs, so that's great. Okay, wonderful. Now, for any OPC HDA experts or general experts out in the crowd here, this data that I just showed you can be accessed and viewed via any client software that supports OPC HDA. So it has to support HDA. It's not historical access for UA, and it's not OPC DA. It's HDA only. And if you're an expert out there, OPC HDA methods that we support includes the following list. The plugin uses the classic specification for an OPC HDA. So the plugin has passed the OPC's Foundation Certifications Test Tool for HDA self-compliance, and we've also tested this with numerous third-party HDA clients. And it displays all those raw values from the data store for validation, but we do not include visualization, trending, reporting, or analytics. That would be done by some HDA client software that you might have. So some application notes here. The local historian is designed to provide operations engineers this flexible, easy to set up, and high-speed solution to historize information within the same local area network. Perhaps you have an engineer on a plant floor who wants to analyze a process in maybe one manufacturing cell. He doesn't need it for the entire plant, he doesn't need it for the corporate historian, but just one cell he wants to run some analytics or some tests. Or maybe you have a research and development professional in a manufacturing environment that wants to gather data in a lab for an extended test, like maybe doing stress testing or other validation. Any of these operators can probe that data, trend and view it, and make those day-to-day decisions with the historical data using this local historian plugin. So that's the vision of this. It's helpful for local operators and engineers who want to quickly gather and view archived or trending data without needing to access that corporate historian over a network connection. Just a few notes on licensing. The local historian plugin is licensed separately from other products, and it's not included in any of our suites. There's 2 licensing tiers, logging up to 500 tags and up to 10,000 tags. So please call our sales team if you're interested. If you want to learn more, we actually have a blog post. A common question we get is, what's the difference between our SQL logger, which is data logger plugin, and the local historian plugin? And we actually have a blog post posted by our product owner, Aaron Semley, up that you can go and visit. And just in summary, local historian, flexible, easy to use solution for your historical needs. So I have a couple questions. One good question up here, is the historian plugin part of the server_runtime.exe? It is dependent on that executable, so if the server_runtime is started, the historian plugin will be started. There's actually another service that you'll see in your services list also associated with the historian plugin that handles some other attributes of that plugin and how it functions. So it is dependent on server_runtime.exe to run. Is the historian capable of performing standard math functions on the data, average, min, and max? From Eric, that is a question. The answer to that would be no. You would need another product. We have our advanced tags product that can do those mathematical functions, or you would do that in your HDA client software. And then another question from William, do you have a replay option which would feed the historical data into an OPC client via DA? At this time, we do not have such a replay option. We do have a replay option if you're storing data with a database to maybe an Excel document or to a SQL database or an ODBC compliant database. We have something called our advanced simulator driver that does allow playback, but currently we don't have any replay options for those TSD files. So good question there. Okay, great. So moving on, just to keep us on time here, I'm going to move on to our industrial data folder for Splunk Plug-In. If you do have any continuing questions on the historian, continue to type those questions into the questions pane. Our applications engineers are here to answer you. All right, so industrial data folder for Splunk, we abbreviate this as IDF. And if one plugin wasn't enough, this version 5.16 of KEPServerEX also includes the IDF Splunk plugin. And this new feature of the server has to do with big data. So big data buzzword, right? We've heard it a lot. But what is it about? You're collecting massive amounts of data related to a process or operation, storing it, and then you can search it, analyze it, and visualize it for operational intelligence or business analytics. So big data collection is given even bigger with something that we call the Internet of Things, or IoT. And this is the future vision of every object, like your light bulbs or eyeglasses or anything like that, being Internet enabled or connected. So this means big data applications can now take advantage of these massive amounts of data being generated by the Internet of Connected Things. And these technologies that are being used today for big data analytics and Internet of Things are typically leading edge, but they reside within the IT department. So, really cutting edge stuff, but traditionally or in the past, few years been associated with IT. Well, what if process engineers want to take advantage of this data? Industrial production operations have a lot to gain by consuming and analyzing the wealth of available data in industrial control equipment. The problem is, how do you get access to this large untapped well of machine and sensor data and hook all that into these existing big data tools that were previously used by IT? Well, you need, drivers. You need a way for these big data tools to access that information. So, of course, the answer for us is Kepler's new industrial data forwarder. So you can use the power of KEPServerEX with our 150 plus drivers and different suites to get that industrial data, and then use it to push it into the Splunk software platform for that real-time operational intelligence. Splunk software and cloud services enable organizations to search, monitor, analyze, and visualize this machine-generated big data coming in. It can come in from lots of sources, all your process equipment, your traditional PLCs and devices, websites, other applications, other servers, network sensors, and mobile devices. And that gives users a lot of power. So at this point, you're probably asking, well, what is this Splunk application anyway? Splunk is not part of KEPServerEX. It is another vendor, third-party vendor that we're working with and collaborating with on this product. And it's a big data platform for that operational intelligence. It's for enterprise level, and this data can be collected from any source, making the data accessible, usable, and valuable. So that means using the IDF plugin, you can stream data from KEPServerEX into Splunk. And then it comes in via TCP port, and it will immediately start being collected and indexed. So there's definitely some cool use cases. I'm going to hand control over for a moment to our application expert on this plugin, Labbe, and he's going to give some more detail on those use cases.
Awesome. Thanks, Joanne. So as Joanne previously stated, collecting, indexing, searching, and analyzing capabilities of any machine-generated data in real time is the foundation to Splunk's enterprise and cloud offering. This includes data streaming from packaged and custom applications, which now includes KEPServerEX, application web servers, databases, etc. A long list of inputs and sources of data that Splunk has the connectability to. All data sent to Splunk is indexed with no predefined schema, which allows for any interpretation of the data to be modifiable, flexible, and to be conducted at search time. Now, with Splunk's enterprise, you can correlate complex events spanning these many diverse data sources across your environment. So time-based and transaction-based correlations can be conducted using the Splunk search processing language. This query language provides a large amount of analytical commands to conduct deep analysis and event pattern detection in your data. The results of these searches can then be quickly created into custom reports and dashboards, including monitoring and alert notification capabilities within Splunk Enterprise. This can also be accomplished through a custom application that you can develop using some of Splunk's rich SDK and API capabilities, or through many third-party apps that are currently available within the Splunk platform and environment. So with industrial machine data now accessible in Splunk, there are many potential use cases for this data involving a wide range of topics. These topics range from monitoring industrial devices to ensure that they are operating within their normal operating range or profiles, to root cause analysis for a particular failure that may have been intermittent and has periodically caused downtime for your production systems. as well as helping improve the security posture of your industrial system to help mitigate emerging security threats. Now, multiple data sources can be correlated in Splunk to solve these problems, including the industrial data forwarded from KEPServer.
Awesome. Thanks, Ray. So Ray's actually going to jump in. I'm going to give a quick demo here to talk about Splunk, and of course, my demo timer has expired. For those of you who haven't worked with the server before, or maybe have but don't know this, we do have a demo you can download. Basically, it's our full product install, and then there's just this little demo timer that if I right-click on the EX icon down here and stop runtime service and then start it again, that demo timer will reset. And it just runs for 2 hours and then stops again, and I just have to stop the runtime and start it again to get it going again. So most of us run in demo mode just because it's easier, since we're 3 times a year updating the software. And that's how you can demo all these features and functionalities without actually having to pay for any of the drivers or plugins yourself. Okay, so once again, I'm running the simulation driver for this demo. And this time in my plugin list, I'm going to go all the way down to the IDF for Splunk plugin. Before I do that, I need to set up the connection on the Splunk side. So I'm signed in to Splunk Enterprise here. I downloaded their demo as well, which Ray will talk a little bit about. And I'm going to click this Add Data button. And I'm going to add data from a TCP port. KEPServerEX, the plugin, streams into a TCP port. And I can do any TCP port I want here. So I'm just going to say 5001. I have the option to put in a source name as a way to identify this port. And then source type, we actually are just going to select manual. So KEPServerEX just targets that port, and that's it. And then I have the option to put in a source name, which I can say here, KEPServerEX, to indicate that that is coming from my server. Or maybe, you want to say some area of your plant, geographical location, so you have an indication where that data is coming in. And then I save, and that's really easy. All I need to do to open that port in the Splunk plugin and start receiving data in the Splunk software. So now back in the plugin, I see kind of similar to Historian. I'm going to click to add a new Splunk connection, and really simple here. So I have IP address, IP hostname, my Splunk software, and my server are both on the same machine. So I'm just going to use the local host address there, but I can specify remote IP, and then of course I want to put in the correct port location. And you can have multiple Splunk connections set up. These IP TCP port combinations just have to be unique. So it either has to be a unique IP with the same port, or a unique port with the same IP. All right, so if I click OK there, just one last note on this window actually. I can see item count for the item counts in the specific connection, total item count for item counts across multiple connections if I have multiple connections, and if I have a licensing limit, I can see that there. All right, now I will begin by adding a single item from my server. So I click to add a new Splunk item, and here I have the option to browse my server for a static tag, or again, I do have the option to add dynamic tags. And I'm just going to select ramp 1 and click apply, and that item ID populates, again, an update rate and a deadband, so every 1 second I'm going to be pushing data. And then here I can specify any metadata I want to add. And metadata is kind of a new concept for KEPServer. It's static text that's going to be appended to each event that we send to Splunk. So I can add value to my data by adding metadata in the form of key value pairs. So for example, if I add connection equals connection 5001, I can basically tag this connection as being coming from port 5001 with this key and value pair. So we'll click OK there. I see my metadata coming through. There's my server tag, and I am actually getting data into Splunk right now. So I'm going to go ahead and do a multiple add as well. Just like with the Historian, I can do branch level selection or right-click and go add all beneath selection. And here I can have metadata to the entire group of tags. And so maybe I can say user equals JB to indicate that that's coming from my machine. I click OK. Note that I tried to re-add ramp 1, and since I had already added it, I get a little event log message here, and it doesn't change any of the metadata or settings because I had already added that previously. So some server tag bonuses include array tags are supported, and we do support that dynamic tag addressing. And that's it. I am now getting data from KEPServerEX and sending it to Splunk via that TCP connection. Under 1 or 2 minutes, got that set up and getting my raw data into Splunk. And now all my data is available for that high-level analysis that Ray was talking about via the Splunk interface. So I'll just show you very quickly here in the Splunk interface. If I just enter a search term, star wildcards are supported in Splunk, I can see all the data coming through in my connection with my metadata, user equals JB. So let's say I want to search on that connection key. I should see, if I spell it correctly, data coming through only for that ramp 1 tag because that was the only one that was tagged with that connection metadata. So you can see it's very powerful. For even more demonstration of what actually Splunk is capable of and a cool little test scenario we set up, I'm going to make Ray the presenter once again and let him give you a little tour of a project that he's done with Splunk. Take it away, Ray.
Great. Can everybody hear me? Just want to do a quick sound check. All right, thanks. Okay, so we'll talk about Splunk. What we wanted to do is put together a quick demo to discuss some of the capabilities that Splunk has. And what we've done here is create a project within KEPServer that's simulating sort of a production environment of building and creating imaginary widgets. So within this production environment, we have KEPServer connecting to an Automation Direct DL05 PLC that's connected under the Channel 1, Device 1 configuration within my KEPServer project here, as well as we have some data being forwarded from an ODBC client table. We also have a channel set up looking at the system monitoring of the laptop that's running KEPServer and Splunk's enterprise platform as well, so we can have the ability to monitor process utilization and memory utilization on this laptop as well. And we also have a channel that's created with a simulator driver, which is really just helps drive some of the simulation that's going on. So within this demo, these widgets are being built and created with a couple different attributes such as color, size, and shape, as well as the quality assurance testing results of these production line. Included in that is also some manufacturing data such as torque values with torquing and putting together these widgets, as well as some pressure values from the paint machines and a few other devices. So what we're hoping to do is show some sort of real-world scenario data going into Splunk and then how you can use Splunk to analyze and monitor this data. So just a quick overview here, I also have my IDF for Splunk connection created, set up the IP address connecting to the local host as well as the port that I'm using to identify. And you can see here as well, you can see your item count within the connection as well as your total item count within your KEPServerEX project. And of course we can identify what your licensing limit is as well. Since I'm running a demo, I currently don't have a limit. So let's step over into Splunk and take a look at some of the capabilities that Splunk has. Now, Joanne already sort of showed you the search function is really the starting point when you're working in Splunk, where you can start looking at the events that are being produced in Splunk. Now, an event in Splunk represents a tag value coming from KEPServer whenever the value or the quality changes. So what you'll see here is a real-time window view of the data that's being forwarded from Splunk, from KEPServerEX into Splunk and the values that are represented in that. Now, what the other thing that the IDF in KEPServerEX does is it sets up some key value pairs already into Splunk when we forward the data. The tag is a key value where it actually will provide the text associated with the tag that you're logging into Splunk, as well as the value and the quality of that tag for the event forwarding into Splunk. Now the search capabilities also have the ability to look at real-time windows. Right now I have a 30-second rolling window showing all the data that's forwarding into Splunk from KEPServerEX. As well as on the left we have the interesting fields. Now the interesting fields represent the key value pairs that are currently available within Splunk based on the search that you've identified. What you can see here is we can actually help filter down and look at data sets more closely by using the interesting fields and the key value pairs to filter on. So let's say if we wanted to look at just the machine 1's paint pressure, we can click on the tag value here. It'll add it to our search bar, and what you'll have is the results is just the filtering of the events associated with that tag only. Now one of the advanced functions within Splunk is the REX function. What the REX function does is it does field extraction or key value creation during the search process. So what I'll put in here is a REX function that I have pre-created. And what this function is going to be doing is parsing out the tag value, the key value pair tag, and creating new key value pairs such as the channel, the device, and in this case the widget and other information. Oh, excuse me, actually I have to modify this just slightly. No, that's not. What I wanted to represent is how you can use this regex function to parse out the tag information and be able to easily filter down to the specific channel or device that's configured in your KEPServer project. So now using the REX function, we can actually look at the interesting fields, and now we have a channel interesting field. And what you'll see is that it represents actually one of the 3 channels that are currently sending data into Splunk from KEPServerEX. So now if you want to look at just data from a specific channel, or if we go to the device key field, look at data from a specific device only from KEPServer, we can easily click on that filter and analyze just that subset of data. Now one of the other things Splunk gives you the ability to do is using the Pivot app, be able to build reports on specific data sets using predefined data models to help define the event data that you want to work with. Now I've created a few data models within this simulation that I can just sort of walk through and show you what it truly represents and the power of being able to have these data models pre-configured. So we'll click on the Pivot app here and select the data model that I created, which I called widget. And we're going to go and select the edit objects. This is where we can edit the objects within the data model itself. Now what you do is you create objects that will use base search filtering to essentially eliminate all the data that you don't want to analyze within this object model. And what that does is it provides extracted attributes based on the search that you've conducted. What you can also do is create calculated attributes as well based on the data within the events that you're filtering on. So for color, for instance, the color is being represented by a numerical value being sent from the PLC, but with a calculated attribute, I can actually translate that numerical value into a text value that gives you some context behind what the value really represents. Now, from these data objects, you can actually go and then create pivot objects, which are charts or tables that represent the data that you want to look at. So let's step through and take a look at just creating a pivot chart with the color data that's currently available within Splunk. You have options to create column charts as well as bar charts. For the color one, I like to use the pie chart because it's really quick and easy to sort of put together a visualization of what sort of data you can pull from it. So what we'll do is we'll actually select the color attribute that I've created within the data models. And you'll see that a pie chart is going to be created that's going to represent the percentages and the amounts of events that correlate to how many widgets of each type are actually created. So what this represents here is the amount of black widgets that were created and then the percentage based on how many total widgets were created. So once you set up your data models, it's really easy to create charts and graphs that give you some context behind that data really quickly and easily without having to step through and use the searching language to make those. Now what's great about the pivots as well is you can actually save these and export these as reports and dashboards that you can always go back and reference really quickly and easily, not only for a single user, but you can also set up reports and alerts, or sorry, set up dashboards and reports that are accessible to all Splunk users within your corporation. Now, one of the other key features of Splunk, that the last one I want to talk about, is the Universal Forwarder. Now, the Universal Forwarder provides a reliable, secure data collection method to send data to the Splunk Enterprise or cloud platforms. And what it does is it indexes data remotely and provides the indexed data back to Splunk Enterprise in a compressed format to help limit bandwidth usage. Typically, the installation on the industrial or the Universal Forwarder would be installed on the same machine that KEPServerEX is installed as well. What this provides is some key features for the Universal Forwarder for you to be able to use some features of the Universal Forwarder to send your data into Splunk. What the Universal Forwarder can do is it has the ability to utilize SSL to authenticate and encrypt data connections between your operations network and your IT infrastructure that Splunk is typically installed on. And it also gives you the ability to persist and buffer data locally in the case that you have intermittent connectivity between KEPServerEX and the Splunk Enterprise installation. Now, a Splunk Enterprise demo is available on their website at www.splunk.com. And the demo is fully functional and allows for up to 500 megabytes per day to be indexed. Now, a large collection of help documentation is also available on their website, as well as a tech support team that can help you with any questions configuring Splunk or using any of the analytical tools provided within Splunk.
Is that it?
Yeah, that's it.
Good job, Rob.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Can everybody hear me again? Joanne Bacharach. Hopefully you can hear me. If you can hear me, please type yes. Okay, there we go. We get it. We get it. All right, so I just saw some questions popping through that I think would be helpful to answer. One of them are up here. It says how the IDF plugin affects your Splunk indexing licensing. So the plugin will count towards your Splunk license, your per day license. And if you do need information about how much data will count towards and how that is logging, we do have kind of rule of thumb.
Yeah, the general rule for the amount of data that's going to be forwarded into Splunk is roughly 100 to 115 tags being pushed into Splunk at once per second will be about a gigabyte of data per day to be forwarded into Splunk. So that gives you sort of a rough estimate of how much data is being forwarded into Splunk.
Great. Yeah, and that question was from Joel, so thanks for that. And if you have further questions on those type of performance things, contact our sales team, contact the applications engineers, and we do have that performance information that we can give you some pointers on. Okay, great. Well, I thought that was a super useful demo. So, of course, to kind of wrap up that demo in this section, I want to know about if you are actually leveraging big data in your environment. And the question changed slightly from what I have on the slide. So, are you currently using Splunk Enterprise or Cloud? Yes, no, or not now, but I would like to. So just get a feel for who's on this call with us and how we can follow up with you afterwards. So if you wouldn't mind answering that poll, that would be great. I'll leave it open for a few more seconds, let you answer. So go ahead. Yes, no, not now, but I would like to for using Splunk Enterprise or Cloud. Great. Thank you for voting. Okay, I'll go ahead and close that poll and I can share that with you, share the results. So it looks like a few of you on the call are actually using it, so that's great because you're outside of our normal user base, probably, I think. And some of you not at all, but 20% said that, yeah, you'd like to maybe in the future use that. So good to know. Thank you for sharing that information with us. Okay, so everybody should see my screen again in a moment here. And just to wrap up this section, licensing of the plugin, it's possible in 5 tiers, from 1 to 500 tags all the way up to 50,000 tags. And you're going to call our sales team for pricing if you're interested. All the items that you have configured in the plugin count towards your license, regardless of if they're enabled or disabled. Now, the next subject we have is the IEC 6870-5, 104, and 101 master drivers. I have a quick demo to go over this, and just to give a little bit of background info, these are protocols that are used in the power, renewable energy, and utility sectors. The protocols are primary substation automation protocols that are used typically outside of the U.S. and Europe and Asia, and are used for telecontrol or SCADA applications. The 101 driver is for serial-based devices, and the 104 is for networked Ethernet devices, which those devices are RTUs, IEDs, intelligent electronic devices, controllers, and gateways. And for a very, very quick demo, because we're coming up on the hour here, I have a new project that I'm going to go ahead and upload into KEPServerEX. I saved that project off in XML and just dragged it into this window here. So here's my 101 channel using the 101 master driver and my 104 channel. I see Ethernet encapsulation is supported by the 101, and then you see all the different settings here. You can do balanced and unbalanced transmission. We have a lot of pole settings and some timeout settings. Since you could do like a general interrogation of this device, we do have high timeout settings set in here just in case you're doing a counter interrogation or a general interrogation and you're pulling back through a lot of data. We do support buffered and unbuffered tags, so solicited and unsolicited data. We do separate out things like the quality and the timestamp fields so you can get those in individual tags, which could be valuable. We do have write tags that you can write values down to that controller for control, like execute command. And then we do have command tags to do the counter interrogation, general interrogation, freeze or reset your counters, initiate a test procedure, initiate a time sync. And if I get into device properties here, again, time synchronization is available, and in the communications tab, that's where you can configure your settings for doing your interrogations, doing your test procedures, playing back events, and getting in data with those timeouts. And the 101 is very similar to the 104. The 104 is just going to be for serial-based, so I'm not going to explore those channel and device properties, but that's pretty much it for those drivers. So adds to our power suite, which now includes DNP3, 61850, these 6870 drivers, as well as some of our Modbus drivers, and Yukon and our user configurable driver. Great. I do want to point out that our Power Suite has increased in cost slightly because of the addition of those 2 new drivers. But if you're on support and you have a previous version of the server, you get those 2 new drivers in the suite if you had it licensed previously at no charge to you. Great. Now let's talk about the application report utility, and this will be the last subject of the day that we'll wrap up here in the last 5 minutes. So I get into my application support utility by going into all programs, Kepware, KEPServerEX, utilities, and there's my application report. Now, those of you may have used the application report previously, and it's been pretty much vastly improved. The UI has been improved, and the way the output files have been organized has been improved, and what output files are available for you that has really been widened as far as what you can capture. The application report can be used for things like, let's look here, maybe you want to do like a backup of a project file in your diagnostic information. The number one thing it can be used for is if you send this application report zip file to Kepware's technical support team, that can really help expedite your issue resolution. It helps technical support get all the information that you need, that they need to debug your issue and help you out. So the report is going to include things like your default.opf file that your runtime is using, your system info, class IDs, and then even versioning info of your installed components. So it provides technical support and anybody such as application engineers that are trying to help you with a wealth of information to get the ball rolling very quickly there. And that's the number one reason why you'd most likely want to use this application report or know how to use it. So here I can do, in the actual utility, I can collect server logs, the event log, OPC diagnostics. If I had communication diagnostics that had been collected, I could collect those. I can do a time-bound collection, so I don't have to collect all those records, just a certain period of time. I can do link master if I have that installed on my system. I can do EFM data store, historian data store, process, crash dump information. And then I can also pull information from not only KEPServerEX executables, but the link master runtime. And if I had, for example, redundancy master on here, I could do that. So if I click next here, it would have me specify a file location to store off this data. I'm not going to generate it right now because it might take 30 seconds or so. But I did do it previously, earlier this morning, and it just stores off as a zip file. Automatically now stores off as a zip file. That's new. It didn't do that previously. If I get into the zip file here, I can see here's a bunch of dump information, and then if I get into system info, system summary, lots of helpful information about my system, the OS, major and minor version, whether it's a virtualized machine, and then super helpful info about networking information, and I even get DCOM information here, as well as for those of you familiar with OPC, the OPC enum scans my computer for servers that may be on that computer. So we get all the information about your system to help you troubleshoot. If I go back to the root folder here and get into KEPServerEX, application data, I see there's my default.opf. I even get settings.ini, user info, and any event log info and other things that if you're using other tools in the server like the UA interface or any of the EFM functionality we have, things like that. So really helpful utility to capture data and understand what's going on with your server, and a lot of updates that happened in version 5.16. And I don't see any questions up here about the application report. Some more questions about Splunk, which I think our team is answering. But if you do have any other questions about the application report or anything we've done today, feel free to contact us. I do want to point out we have a YouTube video, a couple YouTube videos up. So here's our YouTube channel, YouTube/Kepware. And we have, previous webinars. This webinar will be up there shortly, within 48 hours. Release videos, and then tutorials and guides. So the things that you saw today for the IDF plugin for Splunk and the local historian plugin, both of those are up here. Cut out, some of the extra info and short little videos that showcase the same type of information, showing you how to set up those plugins if you need that information later on. All right. So of course I end all my webinars with a poll, just because I'm very poll happy. So the last poll I'm going to ask is, will you use the new features in KEPServerEX version 5.16? I'm going to let that poll run for the last minute that we're on the line here. So go ahead and answer that poll if you get a moment. Are you going to use the new features in KEPServerEX version 5.16? And I'll leave it open for a little bit longer. Go ahead and vote. Are you going to use these new features? Help us know how to follow up with you or whether or not we should follow up with you at all afterwards. And I'll leave it open for a couple more seconds. Go ahead and vote. The quicker you vote, the sooner I close this poll. So it's the power's in your hands. All right, so we're at the top of the hour, so I'm going to go ahead and close that and share it with you. And it looks like we got some great pickup on the local historian plugin, so really nice to see a lot of you, almost 50%, would like to use that local historian plugin. And even some interest in the IDF for Splunk plugin, which is a kind of a new marketing area for us. And then some on the call for 6870, definitely application report. As someone who troubleshoots a lot of applications, application report utility is kind of my best friend, so I like to see people who like it. So thanks for sharing that with us. In summary, this has been a huge release, huge amount of new functionality with 2 new plugins, 2 new drivers for 6870, enhancements to the application report, and even some updates to Redundancy Master and Link Master, which are separate products. This release highlights Kepware's position in the industry to provide data with ease that's anywhere, anytime, and for anyone. So if you're IT, operational intelligence, predictive maintenance, remote monitoring, you're in manufacturing, power, water, wastewater, oil and gas, and so on. Even in the 2 years I've been here, Kepware has expanded a lot. And that concludes the feature tour of KEPServerEX v5.16. Thank you for your time. For more information, if you want more product training, more tutorials, check out YouTube. Follow us on that LinkedIn page for updates. You can register for a training class for 2015. We'll have those dates up soon. Please contact sales or technical support teams for additional information or help if you need it. And of course, as always, visit kepware.com to download a free, fully functional 2-hour product demo trial. And we'll stay on the line a little after the hour here to answer some Q&A. And for those of you that want to drop off, feel free to, but I'll look back through some of the questions here that our team has been answering and answer them on the call. So one funny question I have here, poll percentages don't sum up to 100%. That's from Reinhard Steinbruck. The reason is because some of those poll answers were multiple select, so people could answer, choose multiple answers for some of those poll questions, and that's why they don't add up to 100. So good catch. So let's see, we got some more Splunk questions. Can field data come into Kepware via other protocols such as DNP3 and then be converted to 6870? I believe that would be possible, yeah. So we could do that. Would that be using, let's see what the answer is here. We can read data from a DNP3 device and then write the data to the 6870 device. So that's how you would do that conversion if you were connecting to the 6870 IED or device.
That's using link tags.
That would be using link tags or link master.
Yep.
Yeah. So you would need to use additional product to facilitate the linking between the DNP3 driver and the 6870 driver, but that would be link tags or link master. Okay, so the universal forwarder questions on that, people asking if that's different from our plugin, and the answer is yes. The universal forwarder is part of the Splunk Enterprise offering, and it just allows you to add some extra layers of security to your data and port it with that extra security. All right. Any other questions on the webinar content or anything else? Okay, great. Well, thanks so much for attending. Again, recording will be posted, and I really appreciate your time. Thanks a lot to Ray, who did a great demo and presentation, and to our other application engineers on the line, Sam Elsner and Kylie Corrigan, who've been answering your questions as I've speak. Okay, great. Well, I will see you next time.